Is joining me live now as a former Home Affairs Secretary, Mike Pezzullo. Mike, before the election, we talked about what might be in the in tray for an incoming government. Now, it is very clear what that government looks like and the mandate that it has and the power that they're going to have in this term. What should be the first order of business?
Good morning, Laura. As we've previously discussed, obviously the government will be very much focused on delivering on its promises, which are largely in the economic and social space, but they're very conscious, I'm sure, particularly if the senior ministers in the security area are reappointed, as is likely to be the case. They're very alert to how messy, lonely and hard the outside world is. Only just this morning, obviously, there are concerning reports coming in about the potential for escalation between India and Pakistan. We might come back to that. So I think those issues will demand a greater proportion of the PM's personal time and the time of the National Security Committee than perhaps people outside of the system might anticipate. The things we talked about last week, we'll just go through them quickly because I'm sure we'll be able to revisit these in the weeks ahead. There are a number of very key defence decisions that need to be attended to in this term, particularly what we do to ensure that we don't have a submarine capability gap, extending the Collins class and making sure that the Virginia acquisition and the AUKUS design are all on track. Maybe we can come back to that. And there are a whole lot of other defence issues that we've spoken about. I think defence funding will be a concern. I think I said last week that if you combined what the coalition was promising in terms of funding, plus the excellent defence strategy that was derived from the Defence Strategic Review, you'd have just about the optimal defence policy and strategy for the country. So that'll be a challenge in terms of budgetary provisioning. I think in terms of the US alliance, there'll be dramatic developments in that alliance over the next 3 years. Setting aside the trade tariff issues, just strictly on the defence side, we'll start to see the arrival of the 4 US combat submarines in 2027. I actually got the number wrong last week when I was saying to you, Laura, that that'll be 10% of their available force. If you actually look at the available submarine force the Americans have, allowing for boats that are in maintenance, it's actually higher than that. It's about 4 out of 32 combat submarines, attack submarines. Very significant deployment. That starts to happen in Stirling in WA from 2027. That will play Australia into a whole lot of geopolitical issues that we're really, frankly, unused to being directly involved in supporting US combat forces operating from Australia. So that's in the alliance space. I think, as I said to you last week, in relation to Asia, I think Minister Wong's got the right balance in terms of ensuring that there's an equilibrium in Asia where we don't get sucked into great power conflict. However, we're just starting to see with the Philippines and a few other countries the introduction of defence and security protection discussions into those bilateral discussions. That'll happen with Korea, Japan, the Philippines and others potentially. And then finally, just to round the list out, Jim Chalmers, the Treasurer, has spoken about this, as has his Secretary. As we proceed down the path of economic reform, we're also going to have to think about not just productivity, very important, but how do we harden certain parts of the economy should, God forbid, some kind of conflict occur. And then finally, in the civil defence and social cohesion space, I think whether it's Mr Burke, who's reappointed as Home Affairs Minister, or someone else, there is a lot of work to be done to bring different parts of the community along in terms of the geopolitical challenges that we face. I was very distressed and concerned to see the sense in the Chinese-Australian community that they might be considered to be disloyal. There was an unfortunate reference to Chinese spies, which I think was rather loosely made. I think there's a lot of work to be done in the social cohesion space as it relates to defence and security.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, I want to pick up on that because there seems to be that was a big mistake in the campaign, I think, and I think Australia has always done a really good job of when the message and the strong message is directed at China, it's always been made clear that it's not about its people or Chinese Australians that live here. It's about the regime, if you like. But that was certainly, well, the lines were blurred during the campaign from the Liberal side of politics. With the Labor government in charge, when you say there's work to be done, what kind of work from a Labor government?
I think in my old area of home affairs, there's a lot of data and a lot of outreach that department has and its minister has with a lot of the community groups. A lot of work, certainly I was current up until late 23, I don't know the current situation. A lot of work was done in collecting data on attitudes, for instance. I think it's very important that work be revisited. I just saw the interview that you did with the incredible Chung Lei. I think it's important that we have a discussion about how brutal and how authoritarian that regime is, but we must always split it off from any sense that we've got any kind of antagonism or difference on racial or civilisational or cultural grounds with the wonderful Chinese people. It's just so important. And in a sense, you've got to overcorrect, Laura. You've got to constantly be talking about the loyalty of the wonderful Chinese Australian community here in Australia, many of whom themselves are actually themselves concerned about what's happened in their homeland, if you want to put in those ancestry terms.
Well, that's why they live here,
with
right?
Just how... Well, a lot of people have come here from Hong Kong, they've come here from Macau. In fact, a lot of Chinese Australians have never had any connection with the mainland at all because they've come out of families that hundreds of years ago migrated into Southeast Asia, and then they subsequently came to Australia. And obviously, some people came here from what was Formosa or Taiwan after the Civil War. We just have to have a very nuanced, layered, very differentiated discussion, but we must always, always not make it about race, about culture or ethnicity. It's geopolitics, and we've really got to be quite explicit in our language and hone in on the geopolitical concerns that we have about communist China.
Yeah, definitely. Very well said. Finally, before I let you go, I want to talk to you about India, Pakistan, because this is an area of the world whose tensions have never really gone away, but there has been a lid on things for quite some time. It has flared because there's been that terrorist attack in the disputed area of Kashmir, where mostly Indian and Nepalese tourists were killed, and then we see India and Pakistan really escalating things. How concerning is this, particularly for Australia?
It's very concerning if the following occurs. We're in a process that's now known as escalation management, where you escalate the controlled application of violence. Let's call it for what it is. It's state violence. The Indians have attacked into Punjab and other parts, as well as into Indian-controlled or Pakistan-administered or controlled Kashmir as well, saying that they're striking at terrorist infrastructure. The Pakistanis have now said, from their Prime Minister down, we reserve the right to strike back, and they've made the point mercifully that they will focus on military targets. The problem, Laura, is a lot of the targets, whether they're air bases or fuel dumps or command and control centres, are in close to civilian populations. So we all hold our breath now to see what the Pakistani strike is likely to be. I think they are likely to strike. They can't, in a sense, let the Indian strike go unanswered. There seems to be some work going on in the background from Washington and Beijing, thankfully, to try to keep tensions down. And here's the kicker, Laura. If it's one strike each, and I don't want this to sound like a sporting contest or something similar, because this is very grave, people are dying, but if it's sort of a draw and they can all back off, and questions of prestige and honour and the need, the sort of the bloodlust of retribution are all kind of dissipated, then I think we'll get through without a significant conflict emerging. If, however, the escalation just keeps going, strike followed by strike followed by strike, it might be that one side then decides to launch a massive attack to preemptively start to degrade the other side's military capability. That gets very dangerous because there's not parity between the two in terms of nuclear weapons. The Indians seem to have more, as far as we can understand, in their stockpile than the Pakistanis do. But the Pakistanis have got a very potent nuclear force. I don't think it's going to go there. I don't think it's going to get to that level. I think common sense and humanity will prevail, but it is a risk.
Let's hope so. Mike Pezzullo, always good to talk to you. We'll see you soon.